Thanks for checking in on the State of Basketball podcast, episode 36. I'm Adam Miller, and I'm here with Jaren Will each and every week, where we're going to be bringing you the news and notes on all 11 Division I schools in the state of Indiana, because in 49 states,
it's just basketball.
So our intro is a little bit wrong this week, Jaren. We said all 11 Division I schools in the state of Indiana, but
you confused me. I was like, wait a minute, no, it wasn't.
I know where you're going. This is episode 36. I'm Adam Miller still. You're Jaren. Jerry Will.
Names have not changed.
You're going through like check. Yeah, we're moving on to D3 this week.
Yes, we are. Elite D3, might I add.
Mm-hmm. Some would say the best.
People would say that. I think that's pretty, and I don't even think it's subjective. I think it's objectively, they were the best last season.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, this week we're going to be talking about Trine, who kind of has, not a claim. They were the best Division III team in basketball last year, and their championship game was against the number one ranked team going into the tournament. So, I mean, if you want, you got to beat the best to be the best. They did that, and they did it in the national championship game. So, undisputably the best team last year, right?
Undisputed, never lost.
Exactly.
In the tournament.
Nice. So we are going to be joined this week by Trine head coach Brooks Miller, and we're really excited. I'm really excited because I was able to catch 3 of their 6 games, and I went to Trine, so it meant a lot to me to see them pull this off. So I got to see my alma mater win a national championship in my lifetime. I hope you get to see the same, Jaren.
Well, I've got 2 to choose from, right? True. West Virginia or Ball State win. That'd be pretty awesome. I don't know if that'll happen, but anything's possible. But I mean, our first ever credentialed basketball game was watching them play in the first round. It was incredible. I was in pain through it because of my back. So I was really the onset of my back problems that we've talked about several times. But we've got
hidden by the chair.
On the money. Yep, hidden by the chair, but my finger was right on the money, right good. There. Our press passes. They're not D1, but they hold a special place in our hearts. They're an elite basketball program in the state of Indiana, so we can't not talk about them, right?
Yeah, we got credentialed to an NCAA tournament game. It's awesome. So we're gonna kind of break down, what it's like to coach at the D3 level. We're gonna talk about what it's like to be national champions, and so we're gonna break that down with Brooks Miller. So I guess anything else you want to add?
Let's bring him in.
All right, let's bring him in here. All right, so we're joined here by Coach Brooks Miller of Trine University, and we're excited about this one. But Brooks, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on the State of Basketball.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, so we want to talk. We want to kind of. Our listeners are mostly Division I fans. We talk about all the 11 Division I schools in Indiana, but we did break down a couple of your games this past year and talk about the awesome stuff we saw. So let's just kind of start from the top. You're been at Trine, is it 13 years now?
Yeah, 13 years, going on year 14. I came here from South Plains Junior College out in West Texas. Worked for a great coach, Hall of Fame coach, Steve Green. He won 3 national championships there. And then before that, I was a graduate assistant at Texas Tech. And before that stop, I was at Hillsdale College. But yeah, my wife and I have been here 13 years. Absolutely tremendous leadership here at Trine, from the chairman of our board, Rick James, and his wife, Vicky, all the way down. So it's a great place to be.
How did they find you? Did you seek it out?
Well, my sister graduated from Tri-State University, and she actually used to babysit for Dr. Brooks and his daughter. And so I never knew if that ever helped me in the situation or not. But one of the assistant football coaches at the time played for us at Hillsdale College when I was an assistant. And it was in March. This is a great story. I'll try to make it as quick as I can. But I was at the Lubbock Airport in Texas. And I was getting a rental car that had no cruise control on it because we had to save the extra $5 a day, the junior college budget. And I was getting ready to leave on a 2-week trip. And I got a call from Dan Maselowitz, who is now the head football coach at Olivet College. He said, "Hey, Brooks, our basketball coach just resigned. Would you be interested in the job?" I said, "Absolutely." The only thing I've ever wanted to achieve in my life was to live on a lake and have a pontoon boat and have a bar in my basement. So I thought I could do those two things in Angola, Indiana. So I hopped in the car. I said, "But hey, I got to go to Little Rock tonight and go work this kid out and then take his uncle out to dinner. And then I got to be in Chicago." And this was a Monday morning. And he goes, "Well, Dr. Brooks, our president's going to be in the office on Tuesday. He's leaving Wednesday to go on vacation. He needs you there on Tuesday." I said, "All right, I'll get it done." So as I'm crossing the Red River, I'll never forget it. I'm crossing the Red River from Texas into Oklahoma. And I get the call. It says, "Hey, Dr. Brooks wants to meet you at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow." Now it's like 11:35 in the morning Central Time on Monday. Yeah. So I figure, how can I do this? So anyway, I get to Little Rock, which is about 7 hours from where I was, 6 hours. Work the guy out, take his uncle out to dinner, talk to the kid, and I get up and I drive through the night and I get to Effingham and I can't go any longer. And if anybody knows anything about Effingham, it's the crossroads of America. There's truck stops everywhere. So I just bundle myself up in the car. And I sleep overnight in the car, and I get up at I probably slept from 2 in the morning to 4:30 in the morning. And I get up and hit the road again. And now I realize I'm meeting the president, but I didn't bring a suit because I never went home from the airport. It wasn't on the way. So I stop at Steinmart, and I wish I would have got this lady's name. This is one of my biggest regrets in my entire life, is not getting this lady's name. She was an older woman, worked at Steinmart in Fort Wayne. I had $80 in cash in a school credit card. I don't think I even had my own credit card at the time. And she pieced together a suit for me for $80. And then I drove up, and I remember getting there. I got there about 9:30 and met with the president for 20 minutes. And told him how bad I wanted the job, and told him I was headed to Dayton, Ohio, to pick a kid up in Virginia, to take him back to school at High Point, down to IMG Academy in Florida, over to Louisiana to the All-Star game, back to Houston, and then from Houston back up to Lubbock to try to see my wife for a day or two. But long story short, I got the job. I did my phone interview at a park in North Carolina. And I came back, and it was just, it's all worked out great. But I'm sure all the coaches out there, I listened to your podcast with Coach Graves the other day and listened to his stories and all the things we talked about, moving around and bouncing around. And fortunately for us, I got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, so we've been here the whole time of their lives. But my wife and I moved the first 7 times of our first eight years together. And that's just kind of how the journey goes. But boy, it was an awesome ride, or it's been an awesome ride.
That's crazy that just happened so quickly. I mean, you felt it was right. You had to go for it. You had to go drive, push your body to the max to make it there.
It was a no-brainer for me. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, so I was close enough to home, and we had a great run in Texas. South Plains ended up winning the national championship the year after I left. We had a lot of guys on that team that we recruited, and Coach Green sent me a national championship ring, and it was an awesome experience out there. I learned more in junior college from Coach Green, I think, collectively on how to manage a group of young men than anybody that I've ever been around, and that's including Coach Knight and my boss at Hillsdale, Coach Dalma, won a national championship at Calvin. Coach Green was just tremendous in managing people and putting teams together. But it was time. I was ready to be a head coach, and it just worked out great.
That's an all-time story. That's incredible.
Good details because we don't have enough beer. Sometimes when we ever get together, it's pretty good. It's a lot of fun.
That's 20 minutes interview. That's insane.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so you alluded to it a little bit. You had a stop in Lubbock. You were a grad assistant under Hall of Fame coach Bob Knight. You also had a game this past season dedicated to Bob Knight. So it seems like he had a pretty big impact on you. Can you just talk about what it was like working for such a titan in the sport like Bob Knight?
And working as a graduate assistant at that time, this was 15 years ago now. Coach Pat Knight was the one that brought me down there. He had a relationship with Coach Dalma, and how I got down there is another awesome story, but that we could save that for another time. But being a part of anything that Coach Knight did, I didn't want to miss anything that he ever said or any time he was with the team. So you were in the office 24/7, not knowing when he would be there, what time he would show up, what he had going on. You never knew when he was going to say, There was one day I was the only one in there. He said, "Hey, boy, come on in here and learn something." And I got to go watch film with him. It was awesome. I mean, it was incredible. Some of the managers, the undergraduate guys, he'd want to go hunting or something at the most random times, and he'd actually make them be like the hunting dogs. If they didn't have any dogs, they'd have to go to the bush and shake them out, something you'd see on TV. And I was hoping he would ask me to do that. I would have loved to have done that. But he was really funny. Coach Knight was extremely funny. I think one of the things I took from that experience as a head coach is it's really important to make things intense. Everything was intense. Everything you did when you were in the office, when you're on the floor, even when he was, you knew he was out of town, you did not know if he was going to pop in. You made sure when you were working the guys out that you always hit them in the chest. In my role as a GA, I had two important roles. We didn't have player development guys at that time. So me and the other GA, Almir Smac, who's one of my best friends in the world and now my agent, he was from Bosnia. So he was trying to find his way over here at the time. And so we were kind of, for the first time in our lives, I was really away from home and he was way away from home. So him and I get really tight, and we did a lot of the player development, and we would meet with coach every once in a while and talk about how we wanted to do things. But the people we really worked for when it came to the work side of it was Chris Beard, Pat, Stu Robinson, guys that, the assistants that really directed us. We were their assistants in a lot of ways. But any moment I got to spend with coach one-on-one, I really treasured, even if it was, he was coming home. I remember one time they had a reunion at West Point, and they needed somebody to go pick him up at the airport. And I'm like, hey, that's me. Now, you got to remember, I'm a GA now. I got a towel on my shoulder at practice. I'm going to get coffee if somebody needs it. And I'm the first guy to volunteer to go pick up coach at the airport. 6 months before that, I was interviewing for the head coaching job at Hillsdale College. I was probably the youngest full-time assistant in the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference at that time when I was 23 years old. So it was a real kick to the ego at times of what your role was. But I was fortunate enough to have guys like Chris Beard around me that said, listen, man, it ain't gonna get any better than this. This is where you're at. This is a unique situation. Soak it all up. Just do whatever it takes. And it was awesome. So there was times where with coach, I remember losing at Sam Houston State. We played a game at a mid-major that was a really, really good team. Like, they were a great team. They didn't get to the NCAA tournament that year, but they were probably the best team in Southland. And I remember sitting with the coaches in the background thinking to myself, why would you play this game when you're at Texas Tech? But coach didn't care at that point. Probably my best moment with Coach Knight, it was really cool. There's a lot of them. But one of the coolest moments that I had was we're in the Great Alaska Shootout, and we're opening up with Alaska Anchorage because they wanted to play coach, and it was kind of a big deal. So that was a game we were going to win. But Gonzaga played Virginia Tech before then. Gonzaga had Austin Day and two other NBA guys that were great. Virginia Tech, the guy that's on Seth Greenberg was coaching that team. They were really talented. We were going to play the winner of that game, and then if we won that one, we were playing the championship game against either Butler, which was Brad Stevens' first year as the head coach at Butler, and maybe they played Seton Hall. I don't even remember who they played. But either way, they didn't think we were playing Butler. So they gave me the scout. So I had to do the scout for Butler, thinking, we're not going to play them. Let's give it to the GA. Because all the other assistants had people lined up. And I think we had somebody else coming up once we returned. Well, anyway, long story short, we beat Gonzaga. They're ranked in the country. We don't really have we maybe got one high major player on our roster at this time, and we found a way to beat these guys. And Coach Beard had the scout. I'll never forget that. And then every time they played Gonzaga since, whether he's been at Ole Miss or he's been at Texas Tech and even Texas, I've always felt like they're going to beat Gonzaga. He's just got a real knack for figuring those things out. I remember how we did it. So we get stuck with Butler, and they're like, oh, Brooks has got the scout. So now I got to give the scout to Stu. Stu's got to translate the scout, and we're playing against Brad Stevens. And I'll never forget it. Like, I'm telling Stu stuff, and he's listening, but he ain't really listening. He's kind of going to do his own thing, which is totally understood. But he had 12 hours to get this thing ready for the team. We're working through the night together. And I remember we're in the hallway at halftime, and it's a tight game at the time, but Butler's outplaying us. They got Mike Green. They had Adam's younger brother, I think Matt Grace. Adam was an assistant on that team. They had a kid from Serbia who was a really good player. They had Matt Howard, who was a freshman. They were really forming together. And I remember sitting in the hallway at halftime, and I said, hey, I think we need to ball screen with Burgess a little bit more. And the look on these assistants' faces, they looked at me like, you just mentioned the ball screen to the guy that's maybe the most anti-ball screen in the history of basketball at this time. And Coach handled it really well. He looked at me and they just walked into another room. And I remember thinking I might have escaped with my life that day. But the really cool thing about that was Brad Stevens obviously idolized Bob Knight. And nobody really knew who Brad Stevens was. I actually knew Brad through being on the road. Not knew him, but we would talk to each other occasionally, recruiting when he was an assistant at Butler. We weren't recruiting the same players, but just knowing him and to see the poise that he had in that game and how good that team was and how loose they played. If you can find that game on the internet, it was an incredibly well-played game by Butler. And I just thought to myself, this guy's coaching against his hero, and he is sitting there so poised. I'll never forget that. And I try to remind myself of that whenever I'm in a big moment. A couple of guys in our conference used to coach me. So, I mean, it's a little bit different situation. I'm not comparing myself to Brad and Coach Saul to Bob Knight. But, you know, some of those emotions come up. And I just look back on that now and how remarkable that was by him and his staff to come out and win that tournament with all those great teams in it.
That's an all-time staff in that tournament right there. That is insane.
Yeah,
I mean, you have you, Bob Knight, Brad Stevens, and Chris Beard. You know, everyone who's involved. I mean, that's
throw me in there. I almost feel guilty when people talk to me about it because, you know, as a GA at the time, you're a glorified passer and rebounder. And every once in a while, I get called into the coaches meeting, and I do remember. So I'm sorry, I got away from your original question. We honored Coach Knight. The sweater I wore that night here this year to honor Coach. Coach Knight also did a lot for Trine. One of the reasons I got the job at Trine is he was really good friends with the chairman of our board at the time, Jerry Allen. Our School of Engineering is named after Jerry and Georgia Allen, two tremendous human beings that have really helped build Trine into what it is. And Coach Knight did the commencement speech a couple years before I got here. That was really the rise of Trine University, where we went to being just a underperforming university to the fastest growing private school in the Midwest, at least in the state of Indiana. Coach Knight really set us in that direction, and Coach would come back and do other meetings for other things for us. He did a couple public service commercials for us. I actually spent more time with Coach Knight after I got the job at Trine. We went fishing one time in Florida together with Jerry and a couple other board members. He just was tremendous for Trine. So it really wasn't Trine, it's just me. It was the whole university. We were celebrating his life. And I was just really fortunate to be a small part of it. And I cherish every minute of that and the people I got to meet. And none of that would happen. It's really hard for me to talk about Coach Knight without talking about Pat, because Pat was the guy for me. Pat's taking care of me. You know, he kept me there going right out of his own pocket, him and his wife, Amanda. So I do everything I can to pay forward the opportunities that he gave me and provided me to be around that rock star group of people here with all of our guys, you know, whether it's a graduate assistant or a manager or somebody that we can help. I always, you know, when you have those humble beginnings, it's always a good reminder of everybody brings value to the group.
Will we get to see a reunion, maybe, you know, on opposite ends of the court here between you and Pat coming up?
I talked to him about it. I mentioned, I said, hey man, we just got this, you know, we won this championship. It would be awesome if you guys came up here in an exhibition game and, you know, we could maybe do our ring ceremony with you guys here where it didn't matter and we didn't have to worry about getting dialed or anything like that. He's like, man, we're playing IU. We ain't going to make it work. So they got an exhibition there. But, you know, Pat's going to be great at Marion. I know he's happy to be back in the state of Indiana, the greatest state, you know, when it comes to college basketball and high school basketball there is. And we're happy to have him close to home. My wife and I, you know, he's done a lot for us. Those guys really created a career for me out of nothing. I was a Division II player that was at Hillsdale College at the time. We weren't having a whole lot of success. And Pat really resurrected my career and opened doors for me that nobody else could have.
It's awesome. Yeah, you know, well, when you play an IU, you know, how are you going to turn that down? But we hope that we get to see you guys.
Their paycheck's a little bit bigger, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, I graduated from Trine in 2018, and like when I was there, like the women's team was really good. They were going to the NCAA tournament, you know, regularly, and you know, the men's team was good, but I would say you hadn't really broken through in the way that you have in the last 5 years since, you know, 6 years. How many? I have 6 years since I graduated. But in 2018, the MTI Center, your new arena, opens. And I mean, when I took Jaren there, like he was very, very impressed at like, this is a Division III arena. Like it is beautiful and it's huge. So how does having a facility like that help your program?
Oh, it's tremendous, especially in our conference. Hope and Calvin have two facilities very similar to ours. I don't think they're as good as ours, and they're as nice as ours in a lot of ways. But in other ways, you could argue that they're a little bit better. But that's what it took to be successful. That changed our entire trajectory. Now, up until then, we had been in 13 years, we're the only team in our conference, including Hope and Calvin, to finish in the top 4 every year. But it was so hard to get over that hump to beat those teams in back-to-back nights in the tournament when you're not the most talented team. And when we got this job, that was kind of the case. But when we moved here into the MTI Center, this became an entirely different job. It became a place where people walked into. Our financial aid has never changed, as you know, Adam. It's a real challenge compared to some of the places that we have to compete against.
Yeah.
But at least you know what you're buying now. You know, you don't go to the Lexus store to go buy a Geo. You come into here, and I'm coming to buy a Lexus because I can afford a Lexus, and you know what you're getting when it comes to that. So I think that helped us tremendously. And I'll just tell you, like, we've gotten better as a staff, and I've had to improve as a coach. We had to figure out, what does it take for us to compete? Who do we have to go get? I think the MTI Center is a significant factor in our growth, but we had to get better. I had to work harder. I remember I got to go down and visit with Coach Beard when he was at Little Rock. So after our year was done, they made the NCAA tournament. I flew to Denver and was out there with them that whole weekend when they beat Purdue. And I just remember watching those guys work. And I came back from there, and the only thing that was important to me was I looked at my assistant coach. I said, listen, man, we ain't working hard enough. We are not recruiting the way we need to recruit. We're not spending enough time preparing our guys. We're not talking to them about the right stuff. And then every year after that, when our season was done, fortunately, Coach Beard kept finding ways to get in the NCAA tournament. I would go spend those weekends with him and his staff. And every year you pick something else up. Spent a lot of time with Mark Adams, his assistant, who just actually got hired back with him this week, was the head coach at Texas Tech after Coach left and went to Texas. So just met a lot of great people, but just continuing to learn what we can do to get better, how we can be a little unique. And if you watched us play in those semifinals and those finals, you can tell our style of play was a little bit different than those teams that we were playing against.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, one of the most beautiful arenas. I mean, haven't seen a lot of Division III arenas, but I mean, it's nicer than a lot of Division I arenas. I mean, it is just gorgeous.
Well, and the kicker to it is, I don't know how many recruits are going to be watching this, but it's just a basketball arena. There's no volleyball. So we don't share that with anybody else other than the women's basketball team. So both their players and our players are in here all the time getting better. We got our weight room in here. We got our own film room that's just state of the art. So we can spend a lot of time developing our players and them developing themselves in the off season. So it's a huge, huge advantage for us in terms of development. We've only lost one player to the portal in 6 years. In the 6 years we've been in here, one guy that's played in our rotation has left. And he was, when I say he played, he probably played 10 minutes a game. But we have not lost a rotational guy in that time period. And I can sit here and beat my chest and say, oh, they just love playing for us. But we all know that's not the case. They love the arena. They love the atmosphere. They love the students like you, Adam, guys that come out and just do a great job of supporting us and making it the best atmosphere in all of small college basketball. I would put us up against any Division II, junior college, NAIA atmosphere there is.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it is purely a basketball facility is incredible. I mean, I think that's a great selling. You mentioned it. There might not be too many, high school potential recruits listening, but to me, that's a great selling point because I know Division I arenas that they don't have their own facility. Like they share it with volleyball and, every other sport. So that's incredible. Just that in itself. But going into our next question. So you've been D3 National Coach of the Year twice now, once in 2021, and then most recently this past year, 2024. In 2021, you had Trine started, 17-0. Because of COVID, there wasn't a tournament. You did play a bowl game against, I think, Randolph-Macon. Talk about that unconventional season and the way it ended and kind of what you learned from it and how that kind of helped you this past season, but also just, the several seasons after that.
Well, I went to Hillsdale College, which is arguably the most conservative college in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And when I left there, I couldn't have told you the difference between what a Democrat and a Republican was. Honest to God, truth. I couldn't tell you what I was. But the one thing we learned from COVID, we made it really easy for our young people to know the difference between what a Republican was and what a Democrat is. And thank God we live in the great state of Indiana, because Coach, I said we had two MVPs, co-MVPs on that team. Governor Holcomb here in Indiana and Governor what's her name up in Michigan, because when those Michigan schools would come down here, they were so beat down with all their regulations and things that we really took advantage of that. Our leadership here at Trine was big time in allowing us to play, creating opportunities. You go to high school games in Indiana, those kids had actual seasons. They had years. Up north here across the border, they lost almost a year of their life in what they were doing. So we had to take advantage of that. I don't deny that at all. But I think anything that we had to do regulation-wise, we opened it and welcomed it with open arms. We're going to do it. Our administration did it to keep our kids in school in-person classes the entire year. And we did it here to create opportunities for our athletes to play. And we really kind of forced our league to play some games. We're the only team in the league that played every team in our league that year, most of them twice, except one school. So that to us, that was an undefeated conference season, and I'll stand by that to this day. And then we had an opportunity at the end of the year. I said, everybody's like, oh, you had such a great team. I can't believe they canceled the NCAA tournament, because we obviously hadn't made the NCAA tournament yet in the career that I've had here in my time here. And I said, hey, don't feel sorry for us. We get to play, and we get to do it with a smile on our face, even though we got to wear these things over to cover us up. But, we're enjoying this experience. We're appreciating every day. What I learned from that, practice is overrated when it comes to beating on these guys every day. We would practice maybe 4 times a week if we could, based on awaiting test results, or depending on whose roommates we had to move. We did a lot more individual workouts. I thought that was huge. We learned that. But at the end of the year, I just said, hey, we ain't going to have this tournament. Why don't we just call who's number one? And because we got all the way up to number 2. So I picked up the phone, and Josh Merkel, incredible coach, also a national coach of the year. They won the national championship the following season. But I said, hey, you guys want to come up here to try and play? We don't, we're doing that here, and we're actually having fans. He said, no, our administration won't let us down here, but you can come here and play. I said, fair enough, I'll be there. No problem. So we drove all the way to Randolph-Macon. We stopped in Gettysburg, and we toured the battlefield. We talked about all the grateful things that things we're grateful for, and how fortunate we are. We're out here wearing masks to play basketball. We could complain about it, or we could just embrace the fact that we still get to play basketball. And look at these monuments here. Look at this Indiana State Monument. Look at how many names of those kids. How many do you think were under the age of 22 standing on Little Round Top? How many people do you think, what was it like then? And then we sat there, we woke up the next morning at the hotel. We had to take our last COVID test. And if anybody fails, we got to turn around and go home.
Oh, no.
But we go down there and play a very, very talented Randolph-Macon team. And what we learned is we needed to improve our talent level. Even though we had tough guys, good players, we're number 2 in the country, but there was a significant gap with who they had and what we were trying to do. They arguably had maybe the best Division III player of all time, and Buzz Anthony was a great player. And then, we got that game. We were down 6 with about, 4 minutes left, but they just kept making big play late in the clock after big play, and we couldn't keep up with them at their place. And little did I know that they'd won like 49 straight home games. I didn't know any of that going into it, but it wouldn't have changed anything. We learned a lot about it. Coach Dockich made sure that it was publicized on ESPN. Reese Davis talked about it on game day, and that was more publicity than we got from ESPN and actually playing and winning the national championship this year. So I thought it was great for our university, great for our young men in a lot of different ways, and it helped really build the momentum and the things we needed to learn to finish the job this year.
Yeah, what an opportunity. And I like that you talked about, the adversity that your players had to go through, when you compare that to the adversity that, people who fought Gettysburg had to go through. Your problems seem a lot smaller when you frame it that way, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds just like an incredible experience all around, right? Like, one, the fact that you were like, you know what, there's no tournament. We're gonna make our own tournament. We're gonna play the team that's allegedly better than us. And it's
absolutely. And I'm glad Josh was all for it, because it was we were really on a mission to prove a lot of people that, we're going to be all right. And I thought that we had a lot of great support. That doesn't happen without an amazing athletic director like Matt Land and our president at the time, Dr. Earl Brooks. Just remarkable people, and having a board that really supported everything we did here. And we have not looked back as a university since COVID. I would say we have thrived. As we didn't survive COVID, we thrived in it. We saw it as an opportunity and not an obstacle, where I think a lot of people still like to wallow in self-pity. We didn't do that here. And that's what I love about being a part of Trine University.
That's awesome.
So, I'm not a journalist major, if you can't tell, because we buried the lead here a little bit. You and Trine won, your first ever national championship. You got to play 4 games at home. You hosted first 4 games, and then the final 4 was just, 45 minutes away down in Fort Wayne. I mean, not to discount your ability or your players' ability at all, but how important was the fan support there? I mean, not a lot of people who make it into this tournament get to play the Final 4 less than an hour away from home. So how important were the fans?
It was really special. I think, when they used to have the Final 4 in Virginia, Hampton-Sydney was actually the closest team to ever play in the Final 4 at like 45 minutes as well. And some of those other ODAC schools have had that opportunity in the past. So I don't think we're new to that. But I will say this was the team all year long, even when we were recruiting it and building it. Things just happened to fall into place. Like, I don't know if you've ever been a part of something like that, but sometimes everything you say, everybody seems to be paying attention, and it actually works. Or sometimes no matter what you do, what button you push, it seems to be the right button, whether you're coaching a basketball team or you're playing a slot machine out in Vegas or something. No matter what it is, whatever lucky thing you're touching, it's working. I don't want to call a lot of luck because our guys worked really hard, but things really fell into place for us when it came to winning basketball games first, which is what we had to do. We couldn't do that if we couldn't get guys to play together. So I think people really enjoyed watching our team play. Our young men did a lot of work in our community by choice. We have a lot of camps and clinics that we do for free. We have a huge Hoosier basketball camp every year that we've getting anywhere from 150 to 170 kids here at Trine that our players work for nothing. We travel around and do skills for success basketball clinics, which has been awesome for us. We just did one in East Noble the other day. We had 77 kids at it. It's a free clinic. We go all over. So I think they worked really hard to develop a fan base too and recruit those fans. And I think my 2 young kids being at Ryan Park Elementary School didn't help. They brought my wife bought a bunch of pool noodles, and those kids love waving those underneath the basket. We have the best free throw defense in the country at any level, I think, especially when it comes to that. So I thought our guys, we knew that we had to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And we called that Stage 5. We read this book, Tribal Leadership, this year. I've talked about it a lot of different times. But we wanted to get to a point to where the basketball was just a platform for us to show people that no matter where you're from, what street you grow up on, what kind of economic background you have, or what you look like, it makes no difference as long as we focus on what brings us together. And we really emphasize sharing the basketball. We really emphasize communication and having enthusiasm and picking each other up. If you watch any of our games, you'd see us in timeouts. We didn't sit on the bench. We had our arms around each other. It was just a constant environment of everyone supporting each other. Now, did we go at each other and challenge each other a little bit? Absolutely. I think that happens in any type of championship environment. But I think people really loved watching our guys play and how they played. And, it was a really special thing to be around, to have that many people here. It was tough. We lost 3 of our last 5 games. We lose to Calvin at home in the season finale, which we could have won the conference outright. We ended up sharing with them, but we had 2,400 people here for that game, and we lost that game in overtime, and that was tough. And then they came back out, and we had like 2,500 or 2,600 people for the Hope game here, that we lost that game in overtime and didn't really play all that well, and we made a lot of mistakes. And I'm just thinking to myself, where are we headed here? We were 22-1, 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Now we've lost at Olivet, who's the 8th place team in our conference. By record was the worst team, but the toughest matchup for us. And really the only team all year that beat us, really beat us. We never were in control of that game. And then to lose those 2 games in overtime, but to have the people stay there and really support us. And we have a guy, Thunder Hogan, who dresses up like Hulk Hogan every day. I think he travels all over. He's a big Michigan fan. He was at the Indianapolis 500. I think they had him on the TV there, but it was really awesome to do it with those kids and have them there. And the coach at Hampton-Sydney, young guy, great coach. The first thing he says to me for the championship game when he comes out, I always sit out and watch warm-ups. I'm not one of those guys, and I'm not saying I'm better than anybody because I do it, but I like to be on the bench. I like watching guys warm up. A lot of coaches don't do that. And the coach from Hampton City walks by our bench, and the first thing he says to me was not, hey, man, you guys do a great job keeping it out of the middle, or, man, you switch well. I really love how you do this, like most coaches do to have small talk or whatever it is. First thing he says to me, how do you get all of those little kids underneath your basket and those kids at your games? They are incredible. And I thanked him because, again, he knows. Like, that guy knows what it takes to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just your team. It's just not your university. It's just this big amoeba that is a part of its own self that grows within your community. It's everybody. And that's where the success comes from. We're down 10 against Platteville with 1:40 to go. We needed every ounce of energy to make sure things ended up the way they did in our favor to win that Elite Eight game.
Yeah. So speak on that a little bit. So like the Elite Eight game, that was your closest game in the tournament, correct?
Yes. And that was the only game in the tournament of a team we played twice. We were up 28 points against Platteville at our place back in December. We really dominated that game start to finish. I think we won by like 13 or 15, but the game was nowhere near that close. But when we left there, we knew how good of a coach Coach Gard was and how great their players were. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, after we won that game, I'm thinking, okay, if we just win 10 conference games as a coach, we're going to get an at-large bid. I hate thinking that way, but part of me thought that way. I hope we don't play these guys again, because they had a huge mental advantage on us. Mm-hmm. With us winning the game that way, I knew as an experienced guy, I mean, you just saw it the other night. The Mavericks won by 38 or whatever it was, and there was no doubt in my mind Boston was going to just hammer them. The game is that there's such a mental advantage that comes with a lopsided victory like that. And I knew they were much more prepared for our defense of keeping, how we keep guys out of the middle. They just hadn't seen it. So that was the one team that we played twice that really struggled, we really struggled with. We had to overcome a lot of their playmaking abilities. The other ones, I really felt like we were in control of all the games. We had a close game against Fontbonne, but we pulled away at the end. We were up 20 against Co. They came all the way back, but we ended up winning the game at the end. We hit some big shots. And then in the Final Four, I think those two games, minus a little bit in the beginning of Hampton Sydney, we were in control of the entire game, those two games. With our unique style. But Platteville, yes, very, very well coached team with great players. They had Logan Pearson, who was the Division III Player of the Year.
Yeah, so just a little bit. I remember, was it Drew Moore gets fouled on a putback after an intentional miss on the free throw when you're down 2 at the end of regulation?
Yeah, we're actually down 3 with 5 seconds left, and we come down with the ball, and Cortez Garland just throws the ball directly out of bounds, like across from our bench with 3 seconds left. And, nobody panicked. Like, it was like, okay, so what's next? So we got the guys up. We're denying the ball. We're trying to get a steal, obviously, down 3. We were down 3, and then we had to foul. So they got the ball inbound. We had to foul. He goes to the line with like 2 seconds left. And the only way we can win now is if he misses. And he missed, and we had a timeout left. And before we could call the timeout, they fouled us on the rebound. And now we're going to shoot a 1-and-1. And the referees didn't really know how much time there was. I was like, just put 1.3 up there. Just kind of throw it out there as the coach. And they put 1.3 up there. You put something in their mind. They didn't think we were going to win anyway. I don't think at that point, the way the game was going. And Drew walked up to the line with 1.3 seconds left, buries the first one. They called timeout, I think, or maybe we called it. Don't know. There was a timeout. And he said, we're going to run miss. We're going to run miss. And what we do with miss is we shoot the ball off the left bar of the box. If you hit that box, no matter how hard you shoot it, if you hit that left bar, more often than not, I mean, I can tell you 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, I got no idea what it is. I just know more often than not, that ball's going to bounce to the left. So Drew hit that bar square. He knew he sprinted to the left. We dove to the left to take another guy out. Drew caught it, and the kid, Division III, think about Division III, lack of body control. Really skilled players in Division III, not the best athletes. Those Wisconsin guys, they're big, thick guys, and the kid kind of leaned one way, and he couldn't stop. And he just hammered Drew. Now, he definitely fouled him. It was a no-brainer foul, but not too many officials will make that call at that point. And then Drew stepped to the line and hit both free throws because it was a 2-point game then after he made the first one. Made both free throws. We went into overtime. and then we won in overtime.
What's it like to coach a moment like that? I mean, it's so much is out of your hands.
It's like, have you ever put, like, when I was a kid, I had bad ears. I had like 7 sets of ear tubes and stuff. They always did those hearing tests. They put the muffs on you, and or if you put earbuds in without putting the music on, it's kind of what you're in. Like, it's like an echo chamber. Maybe I don't know if that's the right term or not, but it was just like, okay, what's next? All right, what do we have to do here? What gives us the best chance? Because if you lose, it's over. If it was a regular season game, I don't know if we would have been as sharp as a coaching staff or as a team on what was required, because we may have just said, whatever. But it was just one of those things where, like, there's still time on the clock. There's still a play to be made, and the play doesn't care who makes it. So let's just go make that play and see what happens. But it was like it was silence the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into overtime, and we actually we controlled all of overtime. We're up 3. We foul them, shooting a 3 with 8 seconds left. I give Fred Garland a hard time because he's the younger brother. He's the one that fouled up 3. We knew they were going to make all 3. But I can't tell you how much confidence I had in Cortez Garland, knowing he was going to make the game-winning shot. It's just, there's a few things in your life, and I've had about 4 or 5 in my athletic career that I knew were going to happen. And that was one of them that did. We didn't call a timeout there. We just had him bring it up, and I knew Cortez, if you look at Cortez's number, he's named the most outstanding player of the tournament. Nothing is super flashy. He's our leading scorer, only took 12 shots a game. We got 7 guys basically averaging double figures. His assists aren't very high. His shooting percentages aren't wowing you. But the look he could give you with 3 minutes to go in a game, or with under a minute to go in the game, was the most calming look a coach could ever have and their team could ever have. It was really remarkable. I don't know how you'll ever replace that. We got a great group coming back next year. We'll have 8 seniors, 7 fifth-year guys next year. But we're losing him, and we're losing that look. And I don't know how much that's worth yet. I can't wait to journal it all year long and study that look and think, is somebody else going to provide it? Or, how much was it actually worth with that team? So it was a really special moment as a coach. It just knowing everything you've done. Like, we've worked on miss for 5 or 6 years and never used it. I never have our first team guys actually practice missing, because I don't ever want them to practice. I'm just kind of whatever you want to call it for that. But we always teach our third team guys how to do it. So at least we know what to do. And for that to work in that moment, it's just, again, that's kind of how the year was rolling, and how things were happening. And then after we won that, I think our staff and our team felt like there's nothing that we can't overcome. And then the numbers said we only had a 4% chance to win the tournament in Fort Wayne. The Final Four with the 14, we had a 4. And that's why you'll see our guys, a lot of pictures after we won the championship holding the number 4.
I wondered about that.
Yeah, that's what it represented. Everybody said that that we only had a 4% chance, and the guys wanted to remind them of that.
That's awesome. And I guess that kind of leads into our next question, right? In the championship, you played the number 1 team at the time, Hampden-Sydney. The first half, very defensive battle. I think you went into halftime down 2. There's a little bit of foul trouble, but you came out strong in the second half. You outscored Hampden-Sydney by 10 in the second half, right? So what kind of adjustments did you make at halftime? Or is it just one of those things you just said, we're sticking to the game plan, we're going to ride it out, and it's going to come down to that, kind of like you said, all the dominoes falling into place?
Am I allowed to say a cuss word on here, or can you guys bleep that out?
Go for it.
Okay, so to start the game out, where both teams are really nervous, and I think we're down 19-8. And one thing we do as a staff, we let the guys huddle up for a while, and I just get with the staff. I said, let's just remind them what they're doing well. Let's always remind them what they're doing well. We're down 19-8, and I think there's only 7 minutes to go in the first half. So 13 minutes into it, we got 8 points.
Yeah.
And so I just come over to the huddle with a few, those media timeouts, and those championship games are like 2 minutes long. And I looked at the assistants. I said, guys, what are we doing well? Like, what can we tell them? And he's like, my one assistant's a former military guy. He goes, we are playing our dicks off. And I said, you know what? You are absolutely right. We are playing our dicks off. So we get in a huddle. The coaches, we huddle up. I relay the message to the group. And I said, the good news, guys, is we have practiced all year how we can win games by not scoring the basketball. What can we do to win a game without scoring the basketball? So you guys are prepared for this moment. We're in a really good situation here. My guess is they probably haven't practiced that as much. Let's go out there, stay the course, get the ball to three sides, get a paint touch. Let's see what kind of quality possession we can get. We insert one of the toughest young men I've ever coached, and he's only a sophomore. His name's Nate Tucker, football player in high school, quarterback, leader, all the above. He had some huge games for us this year. He goes and scores, I think, 8 straight points. My 7-year-old daughter calls it Tucker time. Gets us right back into the game. We actually take the lead back, I think, in the first half. They hit a fadeaway shot at the buzzer to put us down, whatever you said it was, 2 or 3. I don't even remember. And I'm at the halftime, and I'm just thinking, this is great. Let's stay. We have not played anywhere near executed enough offensively. Now, they're a really good defensive team. We knew that going into it. But we just felt like if we stayed with what we were doing, we were forcing them to make really tough shots. And they made some really tough shots the first half. So I just felt like, let's just stay after it, stay the course. We don't make a whole lot of adjustments at halftime. We never have. We just remind them what's working, what do we want to avoid. And it's our choice to really accept it or not. I get a kick out of these guys that take a lot of credit for thinking they're going to change the game plan. You know, there's certain things you can do. You can change your socks at halftime and say, well, that's why we won. There's so many different things that go into why you win when it comes to adjustments. You don't know what the other team's doing. You don't know where that first foul is going to get called or how it's going to get called, who it's going to get called on. Basketball is such a unique game because the mental is so important. And there's so many things that affect the mental side of the game. So we just try to keep the guys poised, let them know that, hey, we got 20 minutes left together. This is our last 20 minutes together, no matter what, guys. This is our last time to be this one team, this one group. Let's just go out there and enjoy every minute of it. And that's really what we did at the half. And I thought we really dominated from start to finish that second half.
I don't know his name for Hampton-Sydney, but they had one guard who could just shoot the lights out, and he got hot, I think, maybe in the first half and then again in the second half.
Adam Brazil, great player.
Yeah,
great player,
but you guys
Yep.
shut him down for a very long stretch. Like that, because like when we, I think that's when they were up like 19 to 8 on you guys, and he just kind of went off, and then you guys just shut him down.
Well, I don't know if we shut him down as much as we just tried to make him play a different way. A guy like that, and a team like that we just wanted to take them out of rhythm a little bit. We kind of call it steal their practice time. Make them play about 1.5 or 2 behind the normal spot where they usually catch the ball from on the wing or at the top. Don't get overextended. Don't gamble. Make sure we're switching and trying to keep them out of the middle, keep them on one side of the floor. But also, we try to use our offense as our best defense. And I thought we were much more patient. We chart during the games how many times we get 3 reversals, how many times we get paint touches, and then how many times we get both. And also how many times we get neither. How many possessions do we get where we don't get a paint touch or reversals? So we felt it was important that we got the ball side to side and then attacked them late off the dribble when those gaps were really wide. And I think that really kind of took a toll on their offense, us getting longer, solid possessions, forced them into a little bit quicker shots at times.
Yeah, that game was just awesome to watch. Thought it was going to be a very, very low scoring game based on how the first half started, but then things picked up in the second half. But what was your first thought when, you guys were up, pretty decent margin, but what was your first thought when the buzzer sounded and the confetti fell, knowing that you and your team had just won a national championship?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I can give you an entirety answer, but I can tell you a little short story. My grandmother has been my biggest cheerleader my entire life. Every time in Little League I'd hit a home run or my friends would hit a home run, she'd sprint over to us and give us $1. She always told me she was going to be my maid and my cook when I made it to the big leagues and played for the Tigers or whenever I ever did anything great. Well, she's 95 years old and she watches every one of our games. She still has a great mind about her. And my cousin Sam was able to get her to the Coliseum in Fort Wayne. And she was sitting right behind the basket. So when Fred Garland hit the 3 in front of me to put us up like 9 with about 2 minutes to go, I started making sure I knew where she was. But I knew we had to finish the game and everything. And I just think when we won the game, I just thought it was a culmination of so much work, so much commitment. I was very thankful for the support we had there. We probably had 20 to 30 ex-players in my time period that were there. I had little league coaches that were there. I had high school teammates there, my college teammates, my coaches, college coaches, high school coaches. I just looked around and was so thankful that the most important people in my life were there to share that with us and with me, and to support our group. And so I went and found my grandma, and I gave her a big hug and just told her how much I loved her and appreciated her and everything. And so I've been real lucky. I had a lot of great mentors, and I think all that kind of flashed before me. And I kept reminding myself, now ain't the time to get emotional. You're going to have that time. This ain't the time. Let's enjoy this. Let's not sit here and sob and do whatever. But I also, I felt the same way with Coach Guard after we won that Final Four or the Elite Eight game, especially the way we did. My heart, I was extremely ecstatic for our players, but I felt for the other team because I know what we put into it. And I know how I would have felt if we wouldn't have won. And sometimes as a coach, you think about that stuff a little. I do maybe a little too much. Like, it's you're kind of avoiding the misery if you can. I always kind of joke around after a win, well, we just bought 3 more days of our life, where we can kind of enjoy it and smile a little more. And it shouldn't be that way, but sometimes it is. That's the reality of it, at least in my situation. So I felt for Coach and his team. And I was still at the same time ecstatic for mine and our staff and really our university. And it was just an awesome atmosphere. I was happy for Division III basketball to set the record like that, to have it on a, nationally televised on CBS Sports. I still have not watched the game. I'm saving it for a bad day. So I haven't went back and watched it. I've seen bits and pieces. We've cut it up with highlights and stuff. But, it's just a real unique feeling. And I think even now people ask you, are you still on the high from winning? I don't know if that's what it is. But the feeling, I can tell you the best, I study a lot. I study people, I study coaches, I study generals, I study different forms of leadership. And I think all those books really kind of came to life that I read. Like, yeah, this does work if you try it, if you do this way. And it's not like nobody's way. You can't copy anyone else. You got to be yourself.
Right.
But we're all a compilation of a lot of experiences. And I remember reading Bill Walsh's book, The Score Takes Care of Itself, and how you organize and build a team and what you need to be in charge of it. We utilize a lot of that here. And I remember all the things Coach Knight used to say. And, Coach Beard was sitting right behind me in the stands with one of his assistants, Brian Berg, and my other buddy who was the GA with me at Texas Tech, Almir. They flew in on a private jet to be there for us. So all that stuff was just really cool. And you're just so thankful, I guess, that you have that experience. I don't know if there is a coming down. I don't think there's anything that could happen to take away that feeling of all those people being there with us.
That's incredible. Like, just knowing that you had that support system there, that those are all people who have made the impact on your life that helped you get there, right, in one way or another, and just having them there to share that moment with you. I can only imagine how great of a feeling that is. But so, talking about that, winning the national championship, has that made it any harder to schedule any exhibition games for this next year? I mean, I'm thinking I'm sure not a lot of D1 teams want to play against a reigning national champ. So I guess, does it also make it harder to schedule non-conference games? Like, is it easier? Well, is it harder? Like, how does that impact?
That's an interesting question. There's a new rule now for the NCAA. So Division Ones aren't going to play as many non-Division Ones and exhibitions anymore. They get more scrimmages. I don't know exactly the rule, but my buddy, Coach Lou Godino, is an assistant down with Mike Lewis at Ball State. I text him. I said, hey, you guys think you want to play? Can you help us out with a game? And he goes, we don't play national champions. And I'm like, there's still quite a significant difference between their level and ours. I do think, with the team we have coming back, we could compete. I don't know if we can compete the entire 40 minutes, but I know we would be able to compete for, at least a large portion of that time. Maybe we could pull that off, but there is a significant gap there when it comes to the physicality. But I would love that opportunity, more so just for the players to kind of put their, all their hard work, to see it on a big stage. But no, it's really hard to get those games. For us anyway. I don't know if it's because we won a national title as much as it's just hard to get those games. You got a lot of great D2s. And when it comes to D3 scheduling is really unique. Strength of schedule, there's 424 Division III teams. So, there's only 20 at-large berths. That's it. There's only 20. So strength of schedule in the past has been the most important thing you can have. So finding those games hasn't been that difficult because everybody wants to play.
You.
They're good, but you're playing really good teams.
Yeah.
Now the teams that aren't at your level, they don't want to play it, or they don't think they can make it. And so it's hard, and it gets expensive. For us to go to Wisconsin and play two teams that they historically have a great conference there in the WIAC, it's like $16,000 to bus up there and have hotels for 2 nights and feed the guys. It's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go play in a tournament out in Vegas, it's 20-some thousand, or fly to out to California and play the best 2 teams there. So, as much success as we've had here financially at Trine, they just ain't shelling out money like that for us to tour the globe. So, and a lot of times in Division III, some teams can get a lot better in a hurry, and some teams could really kind of fall off the map a little. So you want to get those games, but you really never know who's going to be who. But we have, after 13 years, I've built some great relationships with coaches in our region, in particular in Division III. So, we know who wants to compete and who doesn't. And, we're hoping we're back at a situation where we can make somebody's strength of schedule really good.
Well, if you're looking for, a Division I team that shouldn't be worried about playing a national champion. I mean, Purdue's in the state. They just went to a national championship game. So.
I told you guys, and again, for those of you guys watching this, I'm only in this suit coat here because I'm coming from an event at the Big Brothers or the Boys and Girls Club that Coach Woodson was speaking at. So I was talking to him. I was trying to get him to play. I saw a painter at the Boys and Girls or the Big Brothers Big Sisters event a couple weeks ago, and I tried to get him to play. They didn't want. Obviously, they have other people they're going to play. And that's okay. But, if you could hook me up with Coach Graves' phone number, we've played Indiana State before. When Godino was there, he played us when he was an assistant with Coach Lansing there. So tell Coach Graves he should play us. He should give us a shot at it. That'd be great.
I'll reach out. I'll let him know. I'll let him know that you want to come.
We'll come for free. He doesn't have to give us any guarantee money.
That'd be awesome. If that happens, I might have to go down for that. It'd be awesome. So, Division III is unique that it doesn't award, athletic scholarships. So what is recruiting? What does that look like at the Division III level?
It's really tough. It's because what type of players you have to compete for championships. But those players don't know what type of players you have to have. There's certain levels of Division III, just like there's levels of Division I. And I'll tell you, financial aid is not an easy thing to navigate through because we don't have any say in it here at Trine like some other programs do. There's some programs in our league that have full scholarships based on your race or based on whatever it may be. We don't have that stuff here. We have academic merit scholarships, but we don't have anything that has to do with your need-based or where you're from or anything like that. There's another school in our league that if you're within 50 miles of the university and you went to a public school, then you get free tuition. So we don't have that stuff here at Trine. So there's a lot we got to overcome there. We've had a lot of success with transfers because here at Trine, as you know, Adam, if you can live off campus, you can save yourself a lot of money. So that helps with us once they get to a certain age. So they're only paying that full price for a little while. But our student athletes here at Trine are paying anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. There are a few instances where some kids may be paying $15,000 that are high need, but everybody here is paying everything they can. So recruiting freshmen is a real challenge, especially in an area where NAIA is so prevalent because we need the same guys the NAIA guys are getting. And that's important to us. But we have found a real niche in recruiting guys that have played at other Division III schools and have come here and had success. Pete Smith played 2 years at Hope College in their JV program, and then 2 years later, he's the MVP in our conference and hoisting our first conference championship. Maurice Hunter was the defensive player of the year. Mitch Geller was an all-conference player. Cortez Garland played at Albion and comes here, and he's the most outstanding player in the NCAA tournament, the most coveted award you could possibly have. So we've had some success with transfers, but we've also had four-year guys like Brent Cox who have been two-time first-team all-conference guys here in the MIAA. Nick Bowman, first-team All-American, played JV here for us for a year and a half, and is a first-team All-American as a junior. Jared Holmquist is named the Academic All-American Player of the Year in the country as a senior for us. So we've had some success. You just got to be really creative, and the NIL stuff has helped us a little bit. We have some people that are willing to help out our young men. Now we do something in return for that. Our guys work these clinics for free. We go to all different types of communities and work these clinics and talk to these kids about what it means to be a great teammate. And we have people that support us in that and sponsor those guys and help and help them get through, maybe pay their rent, or, that money maybe goes towards their rent or pays for their food. They're not making the type of money that they're making at the other levels, obviously, but it does help, if you make a few $1,000s here and there, it can help, a young college student quite a bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, and our next question was really about, how the transfer portal and NIL has kind of impacted your program. But what about the D3 level as a whole? Do you have any insight on,
Yeah,
the
no,
grander
I
scale?
absolutely tell you. There's a lot of D3 programs that have found a lot of loopholes in financial aid. There's some great coaches, great players, great programs, great universities, but there's a reason why you see the same schools a lot of times in the Final Four at all these different, in the same sports, in football, basketball, baseball. They can do things with financial aid other people aren't willing to do or can't do. Like, Hope's got the Covenant Scholarship, or Wheaton's got a different type of scholarship for these guys, and Olivet's got this financial aid packages for these guys from junior college. So there's things out there that you got to compete with. So we found a way in NIL, which really isn't even NIL. It's just a part-time job that these guys have, and they're doing basketball clinics. So we can help level the playing field here, doing it legally, doing it the right way. And we're really proud of that. And I think that's going to continue to help us. There's a lot of people out there would much rather help a kid spending 20 grand on his tuition so he doesn't have to eat the dollar menu at McDonald's and work at the cafeteria part-time while he's in basketball season or football season. There's ways you can do it. And I think in small college, it can really benefit these guys. So I think it helps level the playing field. And Coach Painter said that as well, too. All these old bagmen that you used to see, these programs that used to go out and had no problem with doing whatever it took to get players, it's totally flattened that playing field now, that with legally being able to go out and find. Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. This is my idea for NIL. I just listened to a bunch of people bombard Coach Woodson with questions tonight in Fort Wayne about it. And, he said, nobody knows. Here's how you bring down NIL. How do you do it in any other business? You have to saturate the field. So you have to get more great players so you don't have to pay people as much money. Amateurism is now out the window. Tell me this. How far away are we from letting LeBron James come back and play 4 years of college basketball if he's enrolled full time? Think about it. I'm serious. J.R. Smith just got to go play golf.
Yeah.
So why can't we let him come back and play basketball? You're about to see all these guys that play. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but Tony Parker was playing professionally in France at 15 years old.
Yeah.
He is now able to come here and make money at our universities. The high major programs, there's going to be a significant influx of international players coming up here.
Yeah.
So the only way to bring the price down where you don't have to pay Omar Ballo $1.2 million is you got to have 5 Omar Ballos to bring the price down. So how do we do that? Anybody that has college eligibility left and is enrolled full time, why shouldn't they be allowed to play college football or college basketball? I don't think we're far away from that. And I think that's how you can make this realistic and bring the price point down with all these players and really get back to, maybe making it institutional pay, is by making that pool of really great players larger. And then it only benefits our program in Division III too, because those really good players continue to come down to our level. So yeah, I'm really proud of our national championship. We won it when college basketball in Division III is at its best when it comes to talent. I mean, these are 5th-year guys. I mean, we're competing against guys that are 24, 25, 26 years old, been in college 5-6 years. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. But I also know how much work it is to get right back there next year.
Yeah, I mean, NIL is, getting absurd. You hear about, what was it, like Coleman Hawkins going to Kansas State for allegedly $2 million, over $2 million. Just the numbers that people are getting now are absurd. And I remember like the first year that it happened, like people were very, very shocked when Nigel Pack went down to Miami with like a 2-year, $800,000 deal, and now it's ballooned. It's ballooned even more.
That's really interesting how you likened it to businesses, right? Is to drive costs down, saturate the market, you level the playing. Like that's never thought about it. And you talked about J.R. Smith, who when you first brought it up, that was my first thought. Was like, well, J.R. he went and played golf just because he wanted to finish education, and he loves golf. So I never thought about that.
So we're going to deprive these people of an education that want to come back. We're not going to let them play because they've already made money I don't think that's. I don't see how that's going to stand up anymore. I think the NCAA is probably going to become obsolete eventually. Probably sooner than later, when those schools decide that they're going to kind of treat this like football, and we're going to have a BCS tournament. It's going to be all high major schools for the most part, would be my guess moving forward. And I think it's just going to be, an entertainment business at the highest level, just like the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the NCAA seems to lose a lot of their battles that they go for, and these schools and these conferences are getting very, very powerful. So I would definitely could see that happening. But yeah, the Division III level, I mean, Trine's the best that there is. We were talking kind of in our intro before, but I mean, that you beat the number one team in the country at the time when like you said, the talent level was the best because everyone's as old as they've ever been, and you won the national championship. Like, there's no disputing you were just the best team in college basketball last year at the Division III level. So that's
thank you. I appreciate that, and I know it was great to be around a group of guys that felt that way too. Even though we had our ups and downs, we were really confident going into each and every game, and we had a ton of respect for every team that we played. And we knew, we had to recognize. Coach Knight always said the power of negative thinking. How can you lose? You can't really win until you realize how you can lose and what we needed to avoid. And that's tough for young men to embrace, especially with all the testosterone they got flying through them from 18 to 24 years old. What am I not good at? What do I need to avoid? And I think we all still struggle with that. But it was really cool to see our guys come together and accomplish something great.
Well, it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, that's all I have. Do you have anything else for Coach Miller, Jaren?
Nothing for me other than I keep thinking back. We talked about the fan support, all the kids underneath the basket. When we went to the Fontbonne game, I remember sitting there just watching the young kids and how wild it was. It was like the camera would pan to them, and it was just like these kids. In my mind, I was like, "There's no way this is the first time this has ever happened. There's no way like this. These kids know what they're doing, right?" And then I remember a very distinct moment. I can't remember. I think it was sometime in the second half. The game was close, and you turned around to all the fans and you started, hyping up, raising your hands, trying to get the fans into it. And I was just thinking about that moment, and I talked to Adam about it when it happened. It was just like, I've never seen a head coach do that, right? I've seen players on the bench or, some assistant coach or even grad assistants and managers. But you in that moment, taking the time and just trying to get the fans into the game. That's when I knew. I was like, okay, this.
Well,
they're going to win.
It's a pretty rare thing for me to do. I usually try to I used to do it a lot when I was younger, but now I realize, again, I go back to the Brad Stevens point, the poise. But I will tell you, you were at that game. So the young man that they had, and I don't remember his name, but he was hitting shots at such a high rate of difficulty that every time we would try to go on a run, like we had all year long, or made 3 really great plays in a row, he would bury a tough shot. I don't know what he had, 38 or 39 that night. But they were fighting us so tremendous. It was an incredible game to be a part of. They had an answer to every punch that we tried to throw. They would counter, and we finally kind of broke through. And I don't know if we wore them down or what happened, but I just felt like that energy from our guys, because they were just working so hard, and Fontbonne was fighting so hard. It was your typical March Madness game. And again, it's Division III, so we don't get a whole lot of recognition, and understandably so. I'm not saying that we deserve more than those teams at the Division I level. I don't think it was any different than watching a 12 seed battle a 5 seed. And the 5 seed is actually playing well, but the 12 seed is just a really good team. They won their championship. And they're a championship team. They're making championship plays. And when we finally got over that edge, I think I had a release of emotion there, like, we're going to win this game. And I wanted everybody to enjoy it the way we were about to enjoy it. But we needed their help. We needed their energy. And I think right after that, Smiley buried a 3 right in front of our bench, falling away late in the clock. And that was and then the crowd didn't need any help after that.
Yeah, I remember that vividly.
I'm sure that game was it's your easiest game on paper, first round, but I'm sure that game, if your players weren't fully prepared or didn't exactly know what they were getting into with the NCAA tournament, but seeing how hard your team had to fight to win that game was probably like, oh, like this is our easiest game, and it was hard. Like this whole thing is going to be tough, but we can do it.
Yeah, I was just real proud of all of them.
Awesome. Well, that's all I've had. That's all I have. Do you have anything for us before we let you go?
No, I just love what you guys are doing with your Twitter page. I'm not on social media that much. I try to avoid it at all costs, but I do have to look at it for recruiting purposes occasionally. And I love listening to podcasts. So I listened to yours with Coach Graves the other night, and that was awesome. So thank you for all you're doing for basketball in our state, and keep up the great work. And we're proud to have you as an alum. And Jaren, appreciate all the work you do too.
Thank you.
We will, like I said, we'll try and do a little bit of work here to get Trine and Indiana State to play. We don't have much power, but if we can make any in-state matchup happen, we will do what we can.
Awesome, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Coach.
All right, man. Take care. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too.
You too.
All right, man. I mean, thank you to Coach Miller for coming on. That was a solid hour of just learning about, like a different level of basketball. And I think my favorite thing is we've heard it now from two people, just like crazy ways that they've ended up in the position that they ended up in. Like we heard it with Coach Sprue, just basically being like, can you get to Hawaii now?
Right. Hey,
and
you have till Friday to get here.
Yeah.
Next Thursday kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, now with Coach Miller talking about like, yeah, you need to be here tomorrow. And, he's in like, come on.
Well, even when Coach Graves was talking about just the timing behind the potential job opportunities he's had, it's like I could sit and listen to stories like that about how head coaches got either their first job or their specific role. Like I could just listen to it on repeat for hours.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you always expect like, all the coaching changes that like we follow. It's like you can follow them on Twitter and it's like, oh yeah, Dan Hurley flew out to California and he flew back, It's like, okay. But like you don't get this kind of story from that,
Right.
It's
right.
So
like
cool.
there's something behind the scenes. Like, okay, yeah, he flew out, but like there's some wild turn of events. Like it came out a little bit with Coach Hurley is, he talked to Alex Caravan and Caravan was like, come back type situation. But like, there's always a story behind all of that about, I could sit and talk, listen to it for hours.
I wonder at what point, and maybe we'll hear more about this when we see him again and get more on the story. But I wonder at what point he realized, like, I'm on my way, and I do not have a suit to meet with the president.
Right,
$80, man. I hope he still has that suit. I should have asked that.
I gotta ask another time. I'm just bummed that he didn't get the lady's name. The lady changed his life.
Seriously.
Just by helping him pick out a cheap suit.
If she's not at work that day, Trine might not have national championship.
Yeah. Transitive property kind of thing.
It's like butterfly effect,
Yeah.
She calls in sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great interview. First of the show we've ever had a national champion on. First time we've ever had a coach of the year on. Moving up. Big league. Big league,
that
Jaren.
Is true. We've made it. Not even close.
We haven't even begun to peak.
Nope. Can't wait. And we are glad everyone is on this journey with us. All of our listeners, everyone that follows us on social media, we appreciate you. You've helped us get here.
Yeah. So, I guess I don't know what we're going to be doing next week because we pre-recorded this. We didn't go live, so I don't know. It's the middle of July. Jaren's back is hopefully better, right? I don't know.
Yeah, the next time y'all see me, I will have a fixed back potentially.
We're gonna be having to do oh, what's that girl's name? That woman's name who did the interview in bed with Drake?
Bobby Altoff.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing a podcast that style. It'll be me and you, me and you in your bed. You'll be recovering from back surgery. We'll have to do an episode like that. So I don't know. We've got some people lined up to come on the rest of this season. So hoping to get some more head coaches on.
We'll have a national play-by-play broadcaster.
Yes.
On in I think technically 2 weeks from the day this episode releases.
Future's hard, man. Working in the future is hard. Yeah. So we will hopefully carry on interviews and if something monumental happens, probably do an episode on like schedule releases or something, touch on those once most of them are out. But once we get into like the preseason, that's when we'll start dropping previews on people. I don't know.
Yep.
We'll figure it out. You're here. You were here to hear us talk about Trine and Brooks Miller, so we won't keep you any longer.
Yeah. And with that, the clock is showing quadruple zeros, so it's time for us to get out of here. Thanks for checking in on the State of Basketball podcast. We will see you next week. And remember, in 49 states,
it's just basketball.